Hello and welcome to The Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple. On today's 208th episode of The Thriller Zone, it's my honor and pleasure to welcome, for a return visit, former CIA analyst and current author extraordinaire, David McCloskey. David's latest thriller, The Seventh Floor, is everything you've come to expect from this seasoned creator. One quick note before we begin. If you'd like to hear some of our warm-up foolishness, stay tuned to the end of the show to enjoy some behind-the-scenes chatter in our green room. All right, now, without any further ado, please welcome my friend David McCloskey to The Thriller Zone. I love the fact that we can shoot out of the gate talking like this because I was thinking about this, because I've been up for a few hours, I've been thinking about this. I said, there's a couple things I love about McCloskey. Sure, I love the book, The Seventh Floor. Sure,
looks good.
Sure, we're going to talk about it. It is a dandy read. Sure, we're going to get there. But I love the fact that, A, I can always count on you for just good entertainment. You're just a great natural entertainer. Number two, want to give you a huge, I was going to save this for later, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here at the gate because I can do that because it's my fucking show. Our mutual friend, Chris Haughty, and I were chatting on more than one occasion about one of the things we love about you is you are one of the few guys, thriller authors, who have broken out and really kind of mastered TikTok.
Oh, I don't know about that. That's a dangerous statement.
Well,
I'm a user. I wouldn't say master, but it has its charms, despite it being a Chinese influence operation. You know, it's got its upside too.
Well, and therein lies the equation. I could not wait to get to the point that for a guy who knows so much about security and is, like I say, really doing well on TikTok. I mean, you got I was looking at it today, almost 35 grand in followers, and I thought, how does that conflict with his nature about China?
Well, look, on the one hand, I do think it's almost certainly got elements of a, Chinese government influence operation attached to it, and certainly I think it goes without saying that the data would and could be used by the Chinese government to trade models, learn more about us. You guys were to name it. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to get their hands on it. On the other hand, I'm hopeful that my ridiculous videos with me wearing a tinfoil hat will not help the Chinese government too terribly much, and might actually go the other direction. I mean, look, here's the reality. There's a lot of eyeballs on TikTok, right? And so
sure.
I think from a branding standpoint as a writer, I don't, as much fun as it seems like I might be having making those videos, I'd much rather be writing. But I think I've kind of seen it as an important step toward getting myself out there, right?
Well, and this is a conundrum that I chat about a lot of the readers and writers with, is that I hear this all the time, David. Oh, I don't like doing social media.
Yeah.
That's what my publisher's for. A, it's not what your publisher's for.
No, and they're not going to do it for you.
And they're not going to do it. And B, that is just part of what you signed up for. Okay, yeah. So there's that. But I'm a big proponent of, for the most part, whatever is working for the highest and best use to getting our word out for our books, it's all game. It's all fair, game on. However, I have this one beef, and I want your opinion on this because I'm so glad this is coming up. If you scroll your phone and you go to find a new app, the very first thing I do when I'm told about that is I scroll down to find out what data, however you want to use it, they share, or we share with whomever the app is providing. And if you look at TikTok is probably the single worst offender. You give them free access to every single thing that is on your device, period, end of discussion, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you do have to be super careful with that stuff, the terms and conditions. I mean, this is a dated sort of a dated fact, but probably still directionally right. Like the average person had something like 70 plus apps on their phone. If you actually stack up the pages of those kind of terms and conditions, if you actually read them, it would take like a fast reader months to actually read the material, if not longer. So we are in this kind of, I think, bizarre situation, just bring it to writers, where you really, this stuff can be extremely helpful to building a brand and getting the word out, and at the same time, it's, stealing all your privacy. So you have to be really careful. I mean, if I didn't feel the need to try to sell books and get the word out, I would have a flip phone and I wouldn't have any of this stuff, period,
I think I would just go with a burner.
Yeah, just get a burner. Just
I'd get a burner, and I'd rotate them. Yeah. A Nokia flip phone burner that I would rotate out monthly, just like I have a bill for my phone service. I'll just get a new phone each time. Now, it's going to be a real bitch trying to get hold of me.
That's part of the point, though. That's good. Yeah.
But that is part of the point. I mean, you want to reach me? Hit me on email.
Yeah, give me an email. Yeah. I agree. Look, I agree. I think it's a big problem. It's not just a problem for authors, of course. It's a problem for everybody. I think we've gotten so used to these things that we don't fully appreciate how much of our sort of privacy and inner lives they're tapped into.
Well, I think we've covered that well enough. Now, we're going to get to the seventh floor, and I got to share this with you. It's funny. Last night, was it Tuesday, Monday? Last night, we finished binge watching, Tammy and I, The Diplomat. Mm-hmm. Some of the best writing on television. Would you agree with that? Have you seen this?
So I'm embarrassed to say I have not seen a single episode of The Diplomat, and you were probably, David, the 10th person in the past couple weeks who has shamed me on this respect. I mean, I need to start watching it. Is the bottom line.
And the reason I bring that up is they referenced The Seventh Floor.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many. Sorry, not your book. The actual.
No, I know. There wasn't a cameo appearance by the novel. Yeah.
All of a sudden, I can see now Carrie Russell watching it and going, "Listen, guys, I don't know about you, but I've just read this great book, and it deals with the people that we work with." Okay.
That'd be very helpful to the book if I could arrange that. So far, it hasn't happened.
I'll see what I can do. Yeah. But I just found it interesting. So it begs the question, for those who are catching this show, maybe, because sometimes people are tuning in for the very first time. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Tell those folks what the seventh floor is, represents, etc.
Yeah, so the seventh floor is a reference to the seventh floor at CIA, at our Langley headquarters. There's a seventh floor to our original headquarters building, and that is where the director and deputy director and the heads of the directorates have their offices. It's sort of the, it's the executive suite. It's where all the big decisions and big conversations at Langley happen.
Okay, easy enough. Now, your main protagonist, your main character, Artemis Proctor. Yeah, first of all, I haven't heard the name Artemis, tangent here. Artemis Gordon. Tell me what TV show that came from. And it was a male.
Oh, it was a male.
Artemis Gordon.
I have no idea. The only Artemis I've seen in film or TV was a side character in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which was not named. My character's not named after. Who's Artemis Gordon?
One of the two main characters in Wild Wild West.
Oh my gosh!
Remember that TV show?
Okay, no, it's not the movie. It's
the original TV show upon which it is based. You're probably too young to recall. I'm feeling very old.
I might be. I remember was it Will Smith and...
Yes.
Somebody else. It was an insane movie, as I recall. It was like pure late 90s, early 2000s, crazy summer blockbuster kind of vibes. I don't remember who else was in it, though.
All right, here you go. I've pulled it up right here. The Wild Wild West started in 1965. So, yeah, you were not even born yet. Okay. I was only 5 years old. So Robert Conrad played the lead, and Ross Martin played Artemis Gordon. and I can't believe I pulled that name out of nowhere, but I never missed this friggin' show.
Okay.
So I'm going to challenge you for just shits and giggles. Go back and see if you can find, because it's an American Western spy science fiction TV series. So it blended all the genres. So as a kid, it was just like, oh my God, Dad, this is the best show ever, because it had everything we wanted, right? So,
well, that's a bit of what the reboot was like too, where it was like Wild West meets science fiction with, Will Smith in the mix. So as a 13-year-old, what more could you have wanted, right? I mean, there you go.
All right, now hold on a second. Since I am editing the show, I can do whatever I want. I want to find the movie. Now that you've movie with Will, there it is. Okay, who starred opposite him? Oh, Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline, that's right.
Kenneth Branagh, Salma Hayek. Oh yeah, okay. It was freaky good. All right.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I remember having good vibes about it at the time. I mean, I'm not sure. That seems like, just as I think about that movie, one of those movies that if I were to watch it now would have probably held up terribly from that time period. But who knows?
Well, there are various reasons that it may not hold up well, all of which I will not go into at the moment. So back to Artemis Proctor, your character, probably one of the most fresh, original characters I've run across in a while. But it is not a spoiler to say that she faces a good many challenges since being ousted from the CIA. That's not a spoiler, right? I mean, that's...
No,
okay.
It happens pretty quickly in the book. Yeah.
What I want to know is how she came to be. It's just my own personal fascination. I love to crawl inside the wormhole of your brain and figure out, where did Artemis Proctor come from?
Yeah, so she, she's been in all three of my books, and in each one has taken kind of a larger role. So she is very much a secondary character in the first novel, Damascus Station. She's this sort of surly, moderately deranged, chief of station in Damascus. In the second one, she has a bigger role. She's running this thing called Moscow X. In the third one, she starts off running that, and then, as you mentioned, she gets kind of, run out of town after some stuff goes sideways, which, Proctor being Proctor, things tend to go sideways on her. She is one of those characters, David, where, like, you start writing her, and at the time when I was writing Damascus Station, I had, like, a couple case officers in mind as kind of the starting point for some of her personality traits. And she quickly just started to write her own scenes, would be the way I would put it, where I would start with a concept for a scene, and Proctor would be in it, and she would just kind of do her own thing. And so it's a bit bizarre to say, but she really feels like somebody who I didn't create, but who I just met in the process of writing, and then I start to tell her stories and sort of, describe or just write her voice, because it's so clear. Yeah. And that exactly is what you want with any good character, right? Is like the writer doesn't feel like it's not me, and I'm not feeling like I have to just kind of churn to create authenticity or to find her voice. It's just kind of there. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Who was I speaking to recently that did this? Bob Dugoni was saying that he finds that when he's truly in the flow, my words slightly, not his, that he literally can sit there and transcribe. And I will agree with that. I always find that when those, you can call it the muse speaking to you, your channel being open, whatever you want to, however esoteric you want to get, that's when you're truly in that flow. That's when you're just like, oh, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And why in the hell get in the way of that happening? So when people go, well, I have to have a very specific outline for this. And then what if the muse, we'll use that, shows up and Proctor starts just kind of, you're just dictating, so to speak, kind of throws the rules which I'm not a big fan of anyway, out the window, right?
Yeah, I think so. I know lots of successful writers who outline. I cannot do it. I find it really boring, and the stuff that I come up with doesn't end up working on the book anyway, so I've just abandoned the effort. And I do find, to your point, that like the more structure I try to impose early on, the more predictable it makes it, and the less likely I am to find those scenes where I'm just there transcribing something and the voice is really, you go back and you'll edit it, of course, but in the moment, you'll kind of get a bunch of really good, authentic stuff out of that, whatever that is being untapped or undammed. And I have found, I have never sat down with a pretty rigid outline and said, okay, I'm going to write this scene today, and then have that process we just described come out of it. Like, it's always much more organic and kind of, just out of the blue in many ways, I find.
Well, that's where the artistry, in my opinion, kind of comes from. Now, one of the things I love about your books, and it's probably a hallmark of your talents, is the fact that your knowledge, you're having worked as an analyst for the CIA, that inner knowledge can't help but influence what you write. So in this book, you're exploring these dynamics of the mole inside the CIA. And I wonder, and it's so funny, Tammy and I were talking about this over breakfast. I said, I always ask myself, as a curious reader, I'm like, and I turned around, I'm like, do you think this stuff really happens? I mean, do you think there's really moles in the CIA? And we're like, oh, no, that could never happen. I mean, it's a CIA. And then we're like, yeah, but there's bound to be. So how much truth is inside of this book? And I don't mean to say specifically, this book, but your world, because this is book 3. And by the way, I wanted to insert this apology for not chatting up Moscow X. We missed that book, but so okay. How much of that is, really happens? All right, we're going to take a short break, make some room for our sponsors. We'll be back with David McCloskey on the Thriller Zone. Stay with us.
And we're back.
I try in general to make the books as authentic as possible. Like my general approach is, all right, if I can come up with a way for this, if I know that the book needs to involve this type of operation or this type of scene, I will ask myself and ask, people that I've gotten to know well, like, how would this really happen, right? And sometimes you find that that'll work perfectly in the story and you can just use it. Other times you'll find, and typically, like, you can get a lot of individual scenes to be authentic, but what you might not get is for the overall arc to work in the timeline that you have. Or you might find, this is oftentimes the case, that the CIA is a really big place. It's a big bureaucracy. There's a lot of people who do a lot of different specialized things. When you're writing a book and trying to write an intelligence operation authentically, that would involve many more characters than your average or even, well above average reader would want to embark on a journey with. It would make the storytelling, flabby. And so you have to pare down characters. You have to reduce the jargon. You have to, at times, bend the rules for the purposes of telling a better story. I think for me, story trumps everything. The development of the characters trumps everything. It is a balance with the authenticity, but you will quickly. I think a good story can cover for the fact that at a few points you've broken the rules.
Sure.
Fully authentic tradecraft is not going to cover for a story that doesn't work. And so you have to, it's a balance, but when they are actually in conflict, you have to prioritize the storytelling first.
Yeah. It's not too dissimilar that you'll hear a great actor cannot make a splendid performance out of a crappy script.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, you can have Olivier or whomever your favorite fabulous actor is, and you put a weak-ass script in there, and it's like, well, I can only do so much with this. So
Yeah, exactly. Because you've gotten, in that example, you've gotten the story, the character, all wrong from the get go. So what they'd have to just throw the script away to make it work, right?
Yeah.
But I think that said, like, there is, I think you have to treat your reader with respect around the authenticity, and you have to create a world that they want to step into, and part of that is putting the scaffolding up to show that this book is going to deal realistically with this stuff, and we're not gonna shortchange you.
Right. Between you and I.S. Barry, I think you're two of the finest writers crafting this kind of espionage thrillers today. I mean,
Peacock and the Sparrow is a phenomenal book. Alana's book, yeah, she's remarkable. I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
It is one of those books, and this is all about you. Seventh Floor, all about you, baby. But since you said that book is it's not a surprise that she won so many awards. I mean, it's just flat out stinking great.
Yeah, I agree.
But you guys, you're in a league all your own. And, who doesn't love the world of espionage and intelligence and counterintelligence and all that stuff? Yeah. And while, I know it sounds like a Captain Obvious statement, what I mean when I'm talking about realistic portrayal of espionage, and it's so funny because it probably wouldn't do you any good if you and see if I'm clear on this. If you took real true blue trade secrets that you can't even share inside the system and you shared them in a book, you wouldn't be, it might be great reading, but you're not doing your country any service.
That's true. And honestly, it probably wouldn't be great reading. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of the kind of most sensitive stuff would be highly technical, right? Like the reader would be bored. And you would be revealing, crippling state secrets. So you'd be doing yourself no favors, and you'd end up, with the royalties impounded, maybe in prison, and no one bought the book anyway. So there you go.
So it doesn't sound like and you wouldn't have your TikTok following.
And you wouldn't. And I would lose. Yeah, I would lose the crown jewel of the TikTok following. The Chinese would be very disappointed. Yeah, to have me off the platform in prison.
Now, if I know anything about authors, we're sitting here talking about The Seventh Floor, and we're very excited about this. And I know it's been out for a while, but I got you when I could get you, and I appreciate that. But I always ask myself, is David going to be is this the permanent wheelhouse for David? Is this the genre, the specificity, whether it's a series that continues with Artemis or not? Do you see yourself always writing in this specific slot?
For now, yes. I don't have any plans to change. And honestly, for me, that's because I think you can do. I think the range of possibilities in an espionage story is really tremendous. You can deal with really high concept techno thriller kind of stuff.
Sure.
Worlds at stake, blah, blah, blah. You can deal with really personal stories about the people who were caught up in this business, but it's really more of a personal story about them and everything in between. You kind of have the full gamut of the human experience. You can do stuff all around the world. And you're dealing ultimately with questions around loyalty and betrayal and identity. I mean, you're dealing with these sort of evergreen issues that I think it's just there's so much to work with in the genre. A lot of people do this work in the space, but work in historical time periods, Cold War, even before. So there's a lot of territory here that I think is really exciting, and I've really been enjoying kind of writing in this conversation.
And I think for me, it's my favorite sub-genre or specific genre. I love espionage. I like, you made a great point. There's an entire world that you can happen in. And so many of the forces, evil forces, we'll use that phrase, that surround us, have always surrounded us and will, probably always surround us. So there's going to be fodder forever
Right.
on which to write.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
There is something inside your book in the acknowledgments, and I highlighted it because I just thought it was so cool. You start off by saying the third one came a little easier than the second, but not by much. Why is that?
Yeah.
It seems like it would have gotten way easier by the time you're now into the third, and I know you're working on the fourth.
Yeah, it does. So this is, I'm almost ashamed to admit how I viewed this, because I finished the first one, I'm starting the second one, and I'm kind of thinking, all right, well, I've already done this once, it should get easier, right? There
Sure.
should be I've already done it, right? How hard could it be? Most authors that I've spoken to since have said the second one is like orders of magnitude harder than the first, because you are dealing with expectation, you're dealing with a timeline. You probably used what you see as your best stuff in the first one because you wanted it to get published and get it out there. So you've kind of left everything on the table. And then you're being asked to do it all over again, but not on your timeline and with a whole bunch of, other people kind of, involved in the process. That's not easy. Second one was real rough. I had to throw a whole bunch of stuff away, got down the path on some really terrible ideas that my editor luckily steered me away from. Second one, very hard. Third one, easier than the second one, but maybe harder than the first, because I think what I am seeing is that there is more. I think every time, like now, between books one and I'm writing, I'm pretty close to done with the fourth one. Like, you have to do more to manufacture or find the story, I think. It's not, and maybe for me, maybe the fifth one will just kind of come more naturally, and it'll all be a little different for every book. But I've just found that I kind of have to do more each time to make the stories feel crisp and fresh and original, and it's you hope when someone's reading the book it feels really natural, but as you're writing it, it can start to feel a little bit less natural, to be honest with you.
Sure.
That's been my experience. I'm sure other authors would have a different one, but the advantage of now being almost 4 in is there are points in the process, and they've happened in every book, where I say, this isn't going to work, I need to throw it away and be done. And now I have 4 prior examples of feeling that way and pushing through it, and so I know that I can overcome those obstacles, which is helpful to have that mental frame when you're tackling a story.
I always find it so fascinating, and I can tell you a number of authors, and I'm talking about hitters, ballers who have really knocked it out of the park, will say a similar thing. Oh, geez, Dave, when I came up to the plate on this one, I was sure I was going to strike out. What? But you did a hit after hit after hit? Yeah, but you don't know if you've lost the secret sauce or the juice or whatever. And I'm making a little melodrama out of it, but it is true. And I think that's just flat out human nature. I think it's just us going, maybe I do suck. Maybe they're going to find out I do suck.
Yeah, it's an imposter syndrome thing, for sure. And it's the reality that the work, which I'm sure has some analog with other jobs, but it's the kind of thing where you have to kind of sit in a dark, quiet place for a lot of the writing season, and you might think pieces and parts of it are good, but maybe you're not sure, and then all of a sudden it kind of you have to show it to people, or you have to publish it, and then everyone gets to decide if it's good. So there's not this thing where like every day I'm sending my chapter to the committee, who then says, good, job well done, go and have your gin and tonic and enjoy the evening, so it's this, I guess what I'm getting at here is like the feedback loop is a really long one, and so you can work for I worked for 3 months on a concept for the second book that I ended up throwing away, and
Wow.
It just, and it's because I wouldn't have been able to tell. I probably could have told myself or found out a little bit earlier than 3 months, but like, you kind of have to do that work to find out what works and what's good. There's just no way around it. You have to keep putting words on paper, and you're not going to get real-time feedback as you're writing on the execution of the story. It just doesn't work that way. And so it's lonely. It's ultimately, as I've said in a couple of acknowledgement sections, I think, in my books too, like, it's a team sport, but it's a really lonely team sport at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because so much of it's spent in solitude. It's so funny. I find myself, I'll get a nugget of an idea and I'll just sit there and marinate it, maybe marinate on it a little bit too long. But I will spend weeks, if not months, just going, okay, now there's the concept. And then I'll just kind of let it all congeal. And then after I've really knocked it around long enough, then I sit down and bang it out. And to your point, and this is kind of interesting, is that as you start writing all those ideas that you had that you thought were famous because you're fabulous, that they were in your head, you start going, oh, that's not really all that, not really all that interesting, actually. That drama in your brain was way more interesting. So sit around with a gin and tonic and just enjoy more of that drama in your brain.
Well, yeah, and that is the story of, like, everybody who has 2 chapters of a book on their computer but then didn't push it any further, because it's not that that's actually easy. I mean, coming up with original ideas and even writing a couple chapters is not like an easy thing to do. Right. But you will find that, to your point, most of those ideas, when you write them down, you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Or you've got to write it down. You know it doesn't work. You need to come back 3 months later, 2 months later, a week later, and make it work. Yeah. How do you make it work, right? You take an idea that worked 50%, and you need to take it to 80% so that eventually down the road you can take it to, all the way. For me, the writing has really become about the editing. It's about sprinting to get the really, really shitty first draft down on paper so that I can actually start the process of making it, a good book, as opposed to, 120,000 words of ideas that kind of flop, right?
Well, you've just set myself up for. By the way, I'm sitting here clocking. Let's see, I've got this pretty well. Let's see, 382 and a quarter pages. So you're probably what are you, around 110, 115?
Yeah, I think it might be closer to 120, but you're not far off.
Okay,
it's like 115 plus, I think. So that's a good.
Yeah,
you've got your sensei skills working there.
Sensei. Well, you know what it comes from, and people are asking me constantly, and it's amazing when they ask me this. Well, Dave, like they're going to get an inside scoop to get on the show or something. Is there a secret number of pages that need to be done? I'm like, well, no, dude, just write the effing story. Just whatever the story is, write the story. Now, I will tell you, I do enjoy the sub 400 books a little bit more, only because I'm reading so many of them.
Yeah.
And so if you're clocking that 300, 310, 320, I'm a little happier than the 450. Just because of the time involved. Anyway, you have teed me up for the perfect way that I wrap the show, and we did this back in your very first one in Station. It's your best writing advice, and it sounds like you just kind of gave some of it, but I know that it tends to graduate and mature and marinate with time. So what kind of juicy inside secrets from the world international famous David McCloskey can you bestow upon us? Kind sensei.
I'll give. I mean, obviously, there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down on this.
Please do.
We'll probably have a ton of fun, but I mean, I really do think that, like, the centerpiece of it is writing to a word count every day. That's a huge part of it. And for me, it's somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 words. It's not success if you miss it. And if you get over it, it doesn't mean that the next day you get to reduce the total. So it's 1,500 to 2,000 words, more like 2,000. You'll find that if you write 2,000 words a day and you do that 5 to 6 days a week, turns out at the end of the year you have a book. right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there you go. That's one. Two is you should probably be spending time longhand copying the prose of authors that you respect and who you would like to emulate. And it's not that you want to emulate them word for word, but I think that if you take a book that is really, really well written and spend time every morning writing long, copying paragraphs out of it or pages out of it longhand, you will absorb the style and the choices of that author. And then I would say three is you should read your stuff out loud to yourself.
Yeah.
Regularly as you're working on it, because you will find that things that seem like good ideas in your head, and then even might seem like good ideas on paper when you're reading them silently, when read aloud, don't work, don't make sense, are clunky. So, at some point, you should make sure that everything before you publish it, you're reading out loud to yourself.
All right. Well, two things I want to unpack there. Number one, I had never heard write longhand one of your favorite authors. That's really ingenious. You'll hear people go, "Oh, just read the book." Check. Read the book and tear it apart, whatever that means. Check. But to actually pick up your favorite author, which I want to hear one of your favorites that you would do this with, because you must have to come up with the solution. But then to draft it longhand, that's really ingenious, because you are kind of systematically, electronically, there's a better word for it, synaptically breaking that into real cognitive understanding.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And in a way you can't even really consciously articulate. You're absorbing elements of their style and choices they make around syntax and words, and it's really helpful, I think, for improving the craft. I've done it. I'm doing it now on a Michael Chabon book, The Yiddish Policeman's Union. He doesn't write spy fiction at all. I don't think it matters what genre you do this in, by the way. I just think that he is a preternaturally talented storyteller and prose stylist, and so I want to, if someone at some point was like, "Oh, you kind of write like this guy," that would be like the compliment of my life. So I've been doing it on the Yiddish Policeman's Union. I've done it on a Le Carré book. I think I did it on the spy pieces of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, because I think in the genre, I mean, Le Carré's prose styling was he's just to call him just a spy novelist is sort of to reduce the man,
Right.
So I've done work on both of those authors, and it's a tedious thing, right? I mean, we're not accustomed to writing longhand anymore.
Sure.
So your wrist starts to hurt after a while, but it's a really useful thing.
And then the third thing is so good because, and it's so funny, because I do audiobooks, I will find myself getting someone's book, I'm being hired to do it, and then I'll hit a particular chapter, and I'll call them up and say, hey, David, this one chapter, this one segment, you wouldn't be a good example because you would have already done all this homework, but let's say it's a beginner author. I'm like, are you sure that this is the essence of what you want to say? Or I'm going to respect that. Can I place some leeway inside this chapter because it audibly reads more like visually read, and I want it to be more musical to your ear. And 9 times out of 10, they go, yeah, knock yourself out. And I'm not changing the essence of what you're saying. Right. I'm merely interpreting it so that it feels more natural. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're probably doing some of the work there that the author missed or decided not to do. And again, I think honestly reading it out loud, for me, it rarely changes the substance in the way that actually editing it formally could, right?
Right.
But it is adding a more lyrical lens to it so that I am trying to appreciate how it will sound when actually read, right?
Yeah.
And I do find that absolutely does not detract from the styling of the prose or anything like that. It improves on it, right? It makes it more musical.
Yeah, and I would love to impress you or impress my audience or highlight something by pulling out a particular segment of this story. I'm not going to do that. And because I could show you exactly where a particular scene would be, and I would say, what if I just made it a little bit more in the common vernacular? And because sometimes you'll have writers write like "totty." I'm like, well, and I'm not naming anyone here. Do people really talk like that?
Well, that's what you pick up if you actually read it, because you'll be like, this isn't how people speak, you know. Right. And you can, I think, detect some of the unnaturalness. Like if you have written something very purpley in sort of purple prose, like a good way to find it is to read it out loud, right? And then just to make it more simple, trim it down, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think the best example of this probably is, I'm thinking of Elmore Leonard. I'm thinking of Don Winslow.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of guys who can say a whole lot with very few words, and I find myself being more attracted to the dialogue that is more rapid fire, for lack of a better term, because it feels that's how we talk. Yeah. You know? Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, Elmore Leonard has that great line where someone asked him once, you know, like, and I'll butcher the question a little bit here, but someone was basically like, why have your book, you know, can you explain the popularity of your books? And he said, well, I just leave out all the parts that people skip. And, you know, I mean, it's true. When you read his books, they're very sparse and economical, and yet he's leaving in the luminous details around, you know, dialogue and scene setting. Like it's sparse, but it's all you need as the reader to let, you know, sort of your mind unlock the world of the story. And that's why he's an amazing storyteller.
And you just said the best thing ever, and that's this. I always want to say, and it's kind of cliche, but you'll get it, give the reader some credit to use their own imagination.
Yes.
So in other words, if you're just bullet pointing some things, and I notice, and I'm thinking about this with Diplomat, a lot of times, in acting, all you have to do is maybe a look or an expression, and you've now said volumes.
Yep.
So I think it's a great lesson. I think Elmore Leonard's a great lesson person to learn from. Anyway, I want to shoot ahead to this as we start to close. I want to know what's next, and I know I don't want to put you on the spot by going, well, I don't have the title yet, or I don't know I have a release date, but you can give me a hint of what's coming up next.
Yes. So the fourth book is also a spy novel. It is a story set in the middle of the Israel-Iran shadow war, and it is my first novel that does not have any CIA characters. It is all Israelis and all Iranians.
Wow.
And it is about a kind of war of assassinations between the two sides and the people caught up in it. I'm very happy with how it's come out. I'm actually literally probably going to put the final touches on my version of the draft here in the next week or so, and I'm hopeful that it will be out next fall. So,
nice.
There we go.
Well, and you spent a whole lot of your service in that arena, didn't you? If I remember correctly, right? So you've got a real good front row seat inside on that particular world.
I did all Middle East stuff when I was at CIA, so it has been fun to get back into that. Well, fun might be a little bit too far, but it has been interesting. It's always interesting to get back into that world, and even, I mean, right now it's an incredibly, you know, tragic and also interesting and dynamic time in the region. So it's been good fodder for a story.
Superb. And I'm going to make a little note here to myself that I may not keep this, but I'm curious, without drilling down too deeply in the political arena, because we're not here to do that, and I kind of tend to keep my fences clean. But do you think, with the current state of affairs in that part of the world, that we have, let me just say it this way, shit the bed, or are we working toward a a truly cohesive alliance in the right way. Can I make that as nebulous yet pointed as I possibly can?
Yeah, I think, I don't think you could look at U.S. policy in the region over the past generation and say job well done. That's a big stretch. I think we have done a very poor job sort of dealing, or I would say matching desired ends and resources in general. We talk a big game. We talk about all the various interests we have in the region. We don't do a good job with the basics of resourcing them, prioritizing them, just doing some basic stuff that you need to run a foreign policy. We bring the same people back, administration after administration, who have overseen the bad policies. And no, it's I think closer to the shit the bed end of the spectrum than doing a good job. Now that said, we have a tendency, I think, when we encounter this region to make it about us and to sort of turn the dynamics, good, bad, ugly, otherwise, in the region into stories about American foreign policy first and foremost. I think that's usually not true. I mean, oftentimes it can be, right? You look at the Iraq War and you say, oh, that's a story about American foreign policy, right? But I personally don't believe that, we are at the center. I think we have a real case of main character syndrome when it comes to the region. It's oftentimes not true. So we just need to be cautious about that. That said, we are, a critical foreign actor in the region and one that does still have a tremendous amount of influence and resourcing to bring to bear, and we need to figure out a way to stop squandering it every time we step foot in the region. I would not give us high marks over the past 25 years on Middle East foreign policy. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, I knew you'd have a very good insight on that, so thank you for doing that for me.
Absolutely.
Well, I cannot wait to hear what the next book is going to do. I mean, there's one thing that I can always count on you for. Like I said at the beginning, great entertainment, good laughs, and fantastic writing.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that, and I very much appreciate you having me on. This is always fun. So good to be with you.
Well, I appreciate it very much. And folks, if you want to learn more, go to davidmccloskeybooks.com. And of course, as we said earlier in the show, the book has been out. I'm late to the party, but I've always said it doesn't matter how late to the party I get, just that I show up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The book is not past its sell-by date. You can go and get it and read it right now. Nothing's stopping you. Yeah.
Well, I wish you luck at the batting cage tonight, pre-gin and tonic, and then a later evening of post-ball smashing with your own cocktails of choice. Since this is airing later than the big vote between us girls, I'll be very curious and somewhat nervous to see what the results will be.
Yes, we'll all be watching with bated, gin-infused breath tonight to see what happens to our dear country.
And folks, I want to make this an official gin and tonic night.
I heartily approve that endorsement, David.
Yeah. David, thank you again, man.
No, thank you. Great to be with you.
And now for those of you who'd like just a little bit more of the dueling Davids, here's our conversation inside the green room. Enjoy.
Look at this face. Woo. How are you, sir? Look at you. You're having an espresso. You're wearing stylish glasses. Look at you. I would expect nothing less, by the way. I'm not
puppy in her crate so that she wouldn't blast out our speakers in the background.
What kind of puppy is it?
A gorgeous yellow lab.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful.
Got her, 7 weeks ago? 7 or 8 weeks ago? Like 19 pounds, just, she's now 52 pounds.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how that happens with labs, isn't it? Are you like, so let's see, I assume is sleep, like how do they sleep at this age? I'm now forgetting. I'm only remembering humans.
They don't, no. The first couple of, literally up until 3 weeks ago, we were up at 11, 1, and 3.
Yeah.
Now we've managed to get it to 4, but 4 o'clock is her wait. At 4 o'clock, at 3:59, she's like, "Hey, ready to play."
Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, I got a vasectomy to deal with humans, but I feel like there's a threat of this happening again with her, because we have a golden retriever who's very wonderful and old, and she's almost 11, and she's doing fine, but it's just she's 11, so I'm sensing that when the time is right, my wife is going to say we need another one, and then I'm going to be in the same boat, waking up at 3:55 to take a dog out and hang out.
Well, there are lots of advantages, as we all know. I swore I'd never have another dog after I lost my last one because I had to put her down or put him down, and that I said I can't do that again.
Yeah.
But she has brought quite a ray of sunshine, and my wife Tammy is thrilled beyond measure.
Well, that's not nothing, as you know. That's not nothing.
If baby's happy, everybody's happy. Right. All right, so couple things just for you and me. Number one, have been glued to the set, the TV since, I don't know, about 5:30, getting ready to vote. Not vote, but see what's, almost wore mine. And then I thought, God dang it, what is this going to be like? Am I going to wake up tomorrow, figuratively, and want to blow my brains out or be happy?
Well,
and you can fill in the blank however you think I lean.
Exactly. I would be pleasantly surprised if we had any idea who was going to win tonight. Period. Like I'm hoping against a protracted season of chaos and insanity in our country, but these days that's too much to hope for, I think. I mean,
you are asking for a lot.
I am. I know. So, well, I don't know, man. I'm taking my kids to the batting cages tonight so I can avoid watching coverage and probably have a few gin and tonics and call it early would be my guess. So I'm going for the Zen mode here.
Yeah. Now, are you having the gin and tonics while having batting practice, or are you simply watching the kids with batting practice and you're standing in the background with a gin and tonic?
Oh no! What'll probably end up happening is I'll go to the batting cages stone cold sober, and then I'll come back and have a couple afterward. I'm not a totally irresponsible father.
Okay.
Dave. Yeah.
I wouldn't even. I should not even have suggested that. However, the warped part of me does want to.
It's not that warped. I mean, I'll now that you said it, I'll consider it. I'll give it its due. But yeah, I'll probably wait. Any good Texan knows that you can drink before you go to a gun range, but if you go to a batting range, you want to make sure you're sober so you can hit the ball.
All right. Now, just so you won't feel like I'm completely across the fence, my grandchildren adore effing Disney World. Okay. Disneyland, I'm sorry. And Daddy's prescription, Granddaddy, or as they call me, Popo's solution to that is a nice little cocktail called the Negroni.
Yeah, those are good. That does seem like a good way to deal with Disneyland in general. Are you allowed to bring? Do you have to smuggle it in?
I'm already anticipating your question, and by saying there is a restaurant in the middle of the enclave, where I put in my time with the grandchildren, which usually tends to be like 3 or 4 hours, which is entirely too much, and then I go, honey, I'll be right over there at that restaurant bar, sucking down Negronis about as fast as Daddy can.
Give me a Negroni in like a big gulp cup,
And anyone who knows anything about Negronis, it's a triple shot of danger, but it's so delicious.
Yeah, it is. They're very good. They're very tasty.
All right, I do have a question since you brought up G&T, which is probably my single favorite drink because I can drink those and not get in trouble. What is your favorite gin? What is your favorite tonic?
I use I use Fever Tree tonic, which
Yes.
is widely available. It's good. It's
The
fine.
only con to use, P.S.
Yeah, I mean, if you use some of the like lowbrow bargain basement like Target brand tonic water, that will make you feel ill, and it won't be from booze. It'll be from like having 90 grams of sugar before you go to bed. So I use Fever Tree, and then my favorite gin is a gin called Bar Hill, which has a kind of almost a honey infusion to it. It's quite tasty. It is very good. Bar Hill, 2 R's. That'd be my go-to.
Okay, all right. Well,
you
I'm
can also
with
use
you.
like a London Dry too, which would be totally fine. But
About as classic as it gets.
Yeah.
My go-to is Hendrix.
Yes, quite good. That's my
Straight
wife's
up.
as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Used to be Tanqueray back in the day.
I like I mean, there's nothing wrong with Tanqueray. I mean,
Well, something about Tanqueray makes Daddy want to have twice as many that he should, and then the next day is quite painful.
yeah. That's right. I mean, it's good though. So Sapphire is also good. You know.
Sapphire. Oh yeah, Bombay.
Your front row seat to the best thrillers.